Welcome to Innovate, presents Entrepreneurs in Tech. Today, we're delighted to have our guest, Slava Heretz, who is the founder and CEO of Camlann. Slava, thank you for joining us today. And if you don't mind, give us a small introduction about yourself before we dive into it for our listeners and viewers on Entrepreneurs in Tech, and a bit about your tech background.
Great. Thank you for having me. Um,
My
a
pleasure.
little background on me. I originally came from a finance and accounting background. Grew my first startup to 1 million ARR, exited, and now I'm working on the intersection of solving two of the biggest challenges in indie gaming today, which is access to capital and go to market, actually marketing and selling the games. And that's our product. It's a way to disrupt the traditional publishing and PR space in gaming.
Interesting. So you said you came from finance. Well, finance is always a good background to have in any business, whether you're in the tech or any sector. It always is the foundation of every business. But what kind of made you take that transition from finance to gaming, or that the world of gaming, I should say?
Mhm. So I've been a passionate gamer. I came to the United States from Soviet Ukraine, 1989. Fell in love with gaming immediately. So I'm 41 years old. I've been playing games for 35 years. And as I realized what my job really was, it was data analytics. As a fractional CFO, towards the tail end of my finance career, I was really a data analyst, and because a lot of the feedback and advice I was giving to the founders, I worked with B2B tech founders mainly, was let's take a look at your cost of customer acquisition, the CAC, and how it compares to your sales. And what I realized very quickly after doing quite a lot of research was that approach of looking at KPIs and that kind of financial data can apply to tons of other industries. So I took a look, okay, e-commerce, sort of, but there's a lot of competitors out there. And I said, why wouldn't I do something that I'm insanely passionate about, which is gaming? And after much research, I realized that the cost of lead and the cost per player acquisition in the gaming space is insanely low. And I thought I would give it a go and see if I could make a platform that really didn't exist in this space
Mhm.
to kind of address that.
Interesting, very interesting. So you said you're a data analyst, and so pretty much what tells me you are uh, a person who's driven by results, always by the outcomes. What was the outcome? You're always looking at the results, the bottom line of it, which
Mhm.
is extremely important. Yes. Um, let's talk about Ecologic Ltd. and Individual. Uh, what was your biggest takeaway from these two ventures, Ecologic Ltd. and uh, Individual?
Yeah. So it's interesting because both of those companies were one of my first forays into branching out of very tactical finance, meaning like bookkeeping and accounting and tax
Yeah.
controller work, paying bills and stuff, and really into the world of tech. Ecologic was a service provider. It was a high-end commercial carpet cleaning service, but InVisual was a product that they developed in-house
Hmm.
to address a lot of the needs of their customers. It was a great example of entrepreneurship within like a very kind of sleepy and non-tech industry, commercial carpet cleaning, and providing real value to their customer. And I was responsible basically for owning the entire life cycle of product management, sales, marketing. I basically brought a ton of tools and
Hmm.
people and processes and workflows into that company, and it was, I would say, my first venture, if you will. I was an employee of the company, but it was like a startup within a bigger business. So it really did feel like my first venture, and it taught me
Hmm.
so much about cross-departmental flows and how not to silo marketing and sales, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. Um, you started, IntelliStack. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yep, that's right.
IntelliStack. Yeah. How did that change the way handle growth and to grow in a tech company?
Yeah. So IntelliStack was pretty much right after my tenure at Ecologic and InVisual, and it was my own first venture. And as opposed to being an employee and helping my employer drive sales and get to product market fit, it was now my turn to do it for my own company, my first entrepreneurial uh, venture
Venture. Yeah.
into the crazy world. A lot of learning lessons and a lot of knee scrapes and false starts and various issues, sometimes completely out of my control. COVID was one of them. But all's well that ends well. Grew that very successfully, and that is the story that I told in the beginning about how I was able to grow a company to 1 million in ARR, exited towards the tail end of 2020. And a big part of why I'm doing what I'm doing today with Camlann is because of the success I had with funnel building in terms of my potential and then future customers for IntelliStack. That just happened to be on the B2B side. So I was targeting venture funded startups in their early stage. Was very hyper targeted. And so learning how to properly reach and activate and nurture through the entire sort of marketing and sales life cycle, that was the biggest learning lesson I had in that experience.
Hmm. So when you decided to go on your own and say, hey, I want to start my own thing, get a startup. So obviously you done it the right way. Well, I shouldn't say the right way, but the way that I do come across a lot of entrepreneurial um, founders or entrepreneurs or founders of startups who succeeded were able to exit out of them. Most of them, they all worked for other companies and they learned a lot and able to, kind of create, first of all, learn a business, see what's missing, and come up with the ideas. And from there, they kind of like say, okay, you know what? I have the knowledge, I have the experience, I have the network, I understand different aspects to the business because when you're an entrepreneur, you got to wear different hats, not just about the idea. And that's the big misconception. Everybody think, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. I have a great idea. Well, I built this product and then everything gonna come to me on its own. The idea gonna kind of it's like a magnet. It's gonna attract everybody. Sad answer is no. Reality is no. So you pretty much prepared yourself to start your own company or IntelliStack and knew what direction to take, knew what the market needed, what was missing, and all of that.
Yep.
And yes, so from there, did you feel that you took the right path before you started IntelliStack, to kind of say, hey, I prepared myself to be an entrepreneur because I do have the criteria. Because you did everything at the company when you started. You were the salesman. You were the person who took care of the money. You crunched every penny that went in or came out or whatever. You were also the marketing person, so you knew all of the criteria that needed or the fundamentals of starting a business or a startup.
Yeah. And I had a very strong mentor in my previous position at Ecologic and InVisual. Um, Unfortunately, he's passed, but he was the CEO of the company. And I'll never forget, like, just the amount of knowledge I soaked. I'm such a sponge. I soaked up so much knowledge from him and his co-founder. Um, IntelliStack was really something that I sort of fell into. Someone told me before, because it was my first venture at the time, they said, okay, you're starting a new company, your own company. Go into a Starbucks and ask for a 25% discount on a product that has zero discount on it. And I was like, why? He goes, I want you to feel comfortable and get practice doing very uncomfortable things because you're going to be very uncomfortable for a very long time. Sales, marketing, oftentimes things you don't know, product, uh, objections, people having issues, customer success, et cetera, et cetera. There's like literally an entire bajillion things that could possibly be good and that can be bad. And so uh, I remembered that and I took that very much to heart because every new venture I get into, including Camlann, um, I did things that I was sort of uncomfortable with. For example, the way I validated what the true problems were in the indie PC and console space. I knew it. Like I knew deep down in my heart, I've been in the gaming ecosystem for a very long time, but I needed the actual industry to confirm it. And I just started asking a ton of questions. I interviewed probably, man, over 150 people in the industry. We're talking AAA studios, publishers, PR agencies, AA, all the way down to like solo devs working on hobby projects. Um, and so that kind of like getting out of comfort zone and like really diving in to identify a true problem, not a problem that you like think exists, was very much a learning lesson from the previous 10 years. And I was ready to do it because I had experience jumping. Can you imagine going from one industry that you know extremely well and one job type that you know extremely well into a completely other industry and job type? That takes a little bit of leap of faith and doing something you're potentially not comfortable with.
Yes, absolutely correct. So you exited out of IntelliStack, am I right? Or is IntelliStack? I'm sorry, IntelliStack. Yes,
That's right.
excuse me. And what was next for you after you said, "Hey, I got, I did something. I succeeded. I have a proven formula that I could do this. I could now grow to something I want more, and there's a gap there. I want to create something that I know it's going to work." What was next after that?
Yeah. So that's where I started to really dial in on what my absolute passion, the industry that I had the most passion for. I had never worked in it simply because there are no jobs. Um, the industry is extremely top heavy. There's hundreds of billions of dollars in the industry, but the fact that
Correct.
there's so few jobs in it,
Yes.
like that kind of triggered to me that that's sort of a problem. Um, and so what I realized was that 98% of games are commercial failures, meaning they spend X and then earn
Did you
Y,
just
which is
say?
less than X.
Sorry. Did you just say 95%?
98.
No. Wow. In the gaming.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a very home run and hit driven industry. It's either boom or bust.
Wow.
And I did not believe, I still to this day, of course, because this is our mission and vision, is to change that. I don't believe that that should be the case. If by the end of 2027, we've shown that now games are even at like 70, 75% failure rate, we have done our job and then some.
Wow.
And we're already proving that today in the early stages. We're doing something extremely unique. Um, One, we take a scale approach to it. So instead of the traditional studio and publisher model where you spend millions of dollars on development
Hmm.
and marketing,
Hmm.
in the PC and console space. Mobile's a little bit different, but in the PC and console space, it's historically been extremely expensive to develop and market games, and we have quite a lot of proprietary insight and knowledge of how to keep costs low,
Hmm.
increase velocity of development, and then keep the quality as high, if not higher, than what has been done historically. And then we want our games to. It's no longer a question of is this a huge hit? It's now, have you seen
Hmm.
ROI? Have you seen profit? And our threshold for that is quite low. Like if I told some our average, we expect our average game in our portfolio to sell probably 50,000 units, which in the industry today is horrible.
Wow.
If you ask an industry executive if they want their game to sell 50,000 units, they would say, "You mean like 5 years after release, like in a month?" No, 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 no. In its entire life cycle. Um, and that's our vision, and we believe that it's doable with the technology that we've built.
Hmm. Now, let's talk about launch source and GoPT, that what kind of got you ready for Camlin, which is what you have now.
Yeah, those were my two, uh, let's call them more direct fractional CFO roles. So after I
Yes.
exited IntelliStack, I was no longer working with hundreds of clients. I really went back to my roots of kind of being a fractional CFO for um, only a few companies, mainly
Hmm.
two, those two that you mentioned. But they're early stage tech companies. So both of them went the way of what you expect an early stage tech company to do, out of business.
So
And
you got a
so,
job with a salary, or you were like
mhm.
you had a fraction, your shareholder, or
No, yeah,
you
it
had
was a
equity.
salary job. It was how I
Okay,
paid my
okay,
rent and stuff.
okay. You were CFO at Launch Source and GoPT. Okay,
Hmm.
and they both went out,
Hmm.
and then
And what's tricky is my role was no longer so in at IntelliStack, we were cross-departmental. We
yes,
brought in technology um, to do not just the financial component, it was the marketing, like MarTech tools, ad tech tools, PR tech, um, obviously fintech. Now you get your CRMs. Now there's the sales tech, et cetera, et cetera. At at both those companies, I was really just responsible for crunching numbers and giving advice based on like, here's your runway, we need to raise, and they weren't able to raise another round, and um, so that's when I jumped into Camlann.
well, Kimlin, it's something. It's your latest venture, or your
Mm,
latest startups, your passion project, and something that you know about. But didn't that kind of scare you? It's like, okay, wait a second. I got lucky once. Would I get lucky again? Let me go get a job. You got a job, early startup companies, and oh, you kind of had the answer. Would work, would not work. I'll
mm,
squeeze it, or I'll ride it for as long as I can. Why didn't you said, hey, you know what? Let me go work for a bigger company instead of starting another startup and go through the whole thing again that I've been through before, and what these two companies I worked for, they went through. What was like
yeah,
the mindset that said, no, I'm going to start my own venture, and that's it, which led you to start Camlin?
I think every serial entrepreneur, which I've now admittedly become, knows deep in their heart that there is no way. Once you pull that band-aid off, once you break that
That's it.
seal, there is no turning back. I know some folks that did get corporate jobs after whatever exit they
Yeah,
had from a startup
yeah,
that they founded. Um, but I feel like it's not as common as my story, which is you just cannot stay away.
hmm,
My brain is just constantly idea flowing. It's just like ideas, 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 and I have to rein myself in to like really stay focused. And sometimes an idea just feels so strong that it like it keeps me up at night. And that's when I sort of pulled the trigger on Camlin because it was keeping me up many, many nights in a row. I was like, I cannot believe I'm not doing this. I have to do this. I have to get a normal job. I have two kids and a family. I have to get a normal job. And then every time I like, yeah, sure, I started applying for various jobs, and every time I was just sitting there like almost self-destructively. I was like, ah, no, I gotta do the new thing.
interesting. Then let's talk about Camlin. I mean, you got it going, you started it. What was the approach of Camlin? What's the challenge of tradition? Because you have challenges of the traditional publishing models right now. So, what was the whole idea behind it, and what was what outcome that you hope for it?
Yeah, we saw a lot of untapped global developer talent, which still to this day exists.
Hmm.
We now work with 36 games. That is a micro fraction of what we believe is not just the total market of small indie studios, but also an even tinier portion and fraction of video game developers who know the risks, exactly to your point of what we talked about in the previous question. They know how risky it is to get into game development, and so they get a job elsewhere. Very talented game developers, but
Wow.
there's like, I have to pay rent. There's no way I'm getting back into gaming again. And so there's this huge pool of underserved and untapped actual studios that are making games in operation now, and then an even larger pool of folks who want to be making games and can make games and are good at doing it that just don't have the confidence and the platform to feel comfortable that, aha, okay, if I start working on a game, this would be commercially viable and this would be a financially like less risky thing than it used to be back in the day.
Yeah.
That's the vision and the mission of our platform. Our vision is to show developers that there can be a platform that flips the script on traditional publishing and that actually de-risks the dev cycle, release, and making money from not just game sales, but anything to do with the IP, expansions, DLCs, merch, original soundtracks. Um, you'd appreciate that coming from the music industry. Uh, there's quite a lot of extra monetization that can be done in the long tail, and there's a lot of like back catalog sales that, because like in other entertainment fields, like music, like film,
Hmm.
typically you'll see a lot of the sales of a game in the first couple months after a release. And so that back catalog management and that like, bringing in more players into the ecosystem further down the tail than just that 1 or 2 months right after release is a big part of our vision mission, and we're already seeing success with it with our first releases.
A lot of the video gaming companies, they do have a music catalog in their possession
Yeah,
that they probably
yes.
even own.
Yep.
Yes, they own the full publishing and master right to it.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely something very monetizable. And there's some really, I mean, Bethesda, holy moly, the amount of great music that they've put out, it's been pretty uncanny. One
Mhm.
composer.
Because, wow. But some of them also hire big artists as a work for hire and they
Hmm.
own the master.
Yep.
What's been the toughest, I would say, part about changing the indie game publishing scene?
Typically, when you have smaller teams,
Yeah.
um, there's just not enough wiggle room for what's common in the industry, which is delays. So the biggest
Hmm.
challenge we've seen today is just games staying in the oven a little too long and their dev cycles scope creeping and getting a little past expected dates. That's not a long-term challenge, but in the
Hmm.
early stages, it has been problematic because we expect certain release dates. The game is not ready for the public at the time of the release date, and we have to push everything. And it really it's a strain on our runway mainly.
Interesting. Can you give us some examples of how Camlann technology has boosted game studio sales or studio sales?
Oh yeah, 100%. So I'll give you the way that it works in traditional publishers. Most publishers release 2, 3, maybe 4 games a year. They
Yeah.
hire very expensive service operators, like employees. I don't know if you've ever seen the credits of a game. It's like hundreds of people for one game, um, and that's not a realistic ask for small studios. The credits are going to be like 4 people long, including
Hmm.
us. And so for that to be an effective, let's call it marketing beast, technology has to be a part of that, because there's no way a tiny, even services based marketing team is going to
Yeah.
make any kind of impact on the 4 most critical touch points in the gaming industry: press, influencers, festivals, and then the players directly via paid ads. So our platform automates a majority of those PR and advertising motions
Yeah.
by taking the video, GIF, image assets and information about the game that the developers feed us, and then crunches it and outputs it into actual content, press releases, pitch emails, paid ad campaign optimization. So there's a lot of automations that are happening kind of real time.
Hmm.
And we have a contact database of over 30,000 people on the press, influencer, and festival side. And the player side directly, I mean, we're talking billions of potential audience. I
Wow.
think I think one of our titles has close to 1 billion impressions of ad content and videos and things like that.
Amazing. Um, what gaming trends that you excited about these days, and how Camlin, getting in on that action?
So, unfortunately, um, it's a little bit sad for the rest of the industry. But I'm just gonna say it. I'm actually quite excited that there's a reckoning at the AAA level. As you know, there's been a lot of layoffs. There's been a lot of studios and publishers that are kind of looking at their books, being like, I don't know if we can make it. Our billions of dollars of profit isn't gonna make us through the end of the year. And they've been doing studio closures and layoffs. And why that's exciting for us is we're really picking up that fallout. We're really picking up some of these talented developers that are coming out of those unfortunate layoff cycles and encouraging them to either start their own studio or they've already done it and we're just bringing them into our ecosystem. So honestly, the trend of smaller studios on smaller budgets coming out and
Hmm.
making great games is probably my most favorite trend in the industry right now.
Interesting. They lasted longer. How do you balance the financial and the creative side of running a game publishing company?
Um, as a former CFO, uh, I've created a lot of systems and controls. I'll be the first to say that tech is a critical piece of that. Our tech stack is Mercury for banking, Ramp for expense management, Zero for accounting. We have a tax preparer who I've worked with for a bajillion years, and they're awesome. They do R&D credits. They do our state taxes or federal. So this is literally what I've been doing my entire life. I just do it in my sleep. Like the fact that you asked me and I couldn't answer properly, I was like, it just sort of happens. You know what I mean? That's my last concern. I've
Interesting.
been doing this
Uh,
literally, like I've been setting up these financial systems my entire
yeah, you've been
career.
doing for, yes. This is what you started. This is your,
Yes.
should I say, bread and butter,
Mm-hmm.
or your main knowledge. But it's pretty interesting. How do you transform both together and combine them from one
Mm-hmm.
into another? Combine, yes. I mean, looking back at your journey, uh, what's your top advice for any entrepreneur, young entrepreneurs right now? They want to kind of carve their own path similar to what you did.
Yeah. I would say it would be on the fundraising side. A lot of young entrepreneurs are like the end all be all is to raise money from normally a VC to kind of start building product or whatever it is you need to do.
Hmm.
I'd be very careful with that in today's economy. Be really cognizant that the days of 2021 where money was just sort of free flowing is no longer the case. You not only have to have a prototype built, you have to have people that actually want to buy your product. Nowadays, revenue or at least sign contracts is an absolute mandatory ask unless you somehow snuck into Y Combinator. That's the only way you're going to bypass that. But that's not
So
a
the
realistic
word of
ask.
the day, I would say, bootstrap.
Bootstrap as long as you can. I love fun. We raised money. I raised 1.2 million in pre-seed, but it took traction and it took revenue and it took a lot of storytelling and a lot of meetings. I
Hmm.
feel like a lot of young entrepreneurs are like, "Oh, I got this great idea. The product is pretty good. Does anyone want to buy
Hmm.
it?" Have people have people who actually want to pay you money for the thing that you've built, and then go talk to the investors.
So have some case studies, have some tryouts that you've
Look
done.
at case studies. Credit card
Generate
put into the
generate money.
form
So what are
and
you
taking
saying?
their money.
Generate money. Yes,
Yep.
generate money and show them. Hey,
Yep.
my idea works. I build it and it's working and it's active.
Yep.
And then you can ask for money.
That's right.
But do you see that right now a lot of startups that struggle to do what you said they need to do, they're not doing it, and that's why a lot of them still always in the fundraising mode that was they cannot raise anything yet besides friends and family.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's really what the friends and family rounds are for. I did it. That's how we got past a pretty critical milestone
Hmm.
in the early stages. Um, but the reason why our friends and family were so excited about it is because it was pre-revenue. Um, I showed that there was going back to my data. I showed them it's because the whole it's not friends and family, it's friends, family, and fools. Like by far the riskiest investment vehicle to be an angel, especially like a friends and family angel. Um, I showed that there was legitimate pre-release data. So even though nobody was paying us for our games yet, and our
Yep.
customers were not paying subscription yet, I was
Yes.
showing that what the product is supposed to do was actually doing it. So on Steam, for example,
Yeah.
there's a lot of backend data. There's visitor traffic, there's wish lists, there's followers, there's a lot of ad attribution
Yes.
that you can allocate to like what users on the platform are doing in terms of your game. And so I basically showed those KPIs and they were really strong. It just happens that those are pre-release KPIs. We needed to
Interesting.
get to sales KPIs, which we knew would take 12 to 18 months.
Mm.
And so once friends and family bought in, we were able to continue product development and continue bringing on more customers. And then we had the paid customers. We were able to show them, hey, look what we did for these pilot ones back in late 2022. We can do the same thing for you. Um,
Hmm.
and that's how kind of the snowball effect started, and we were able to raise.
What's next on the horizon for Slav, for you, and for Camlin? What's next on the horizon? Anything to look for? Any new ventures or anything that you coming up with through Camlin? Like say, hey, we're going to add this function, we're going to add this, we're going to be available on this, on that. What's next
Our
for?
mandate is really to just release our first like well-known, I wouldn't even say hit, but like a game that people will really recognize us for, like a true flagship game.
Yes.
And I'm knocking on wood right here. We have a couple that are in the pipeline for a October, November release of this year that we're really bullish on. So we're not doing anything new. We're just really hyper focused on getting our hopefully flagship titles to a really great release and beyond, and then continuing onward from there with that momentum.
Hmm.
We're currently raising a seed round to sort of add fuel to the fire, but that's not mandatory. Our cash flow is pretty strong.
Hmm.
Um, so the investors we're talking to were like, listen, we don't need this money right now. We're in a good spot. But if you really want to participate with us on this journey um, and kind of compress time by making this sort of early stage investment, we'd be happy
Hmm.
to look at it. Just the valuation has to be right. We don't want to over dilute.
Got it. Got it. Interesting. Well, I mean, it's pretty insightful because the gaming industry is really something I would say surpassed the music business. You know, really surpassed the music business as far as revenue concern and technology. I mean, I feel first the gaming industry come up with all kind of technology ahead, then the music business kind of follow because right now you cannot just say the music industry, you have to say music tech because tech is the main driving vehicle for the music business. Then believe it or not, the film industry follows, visual
Hmm.
content follows always. So I'm in both, so I understand and I've seen it, but I feel we at a race of time right now with all kind of technology coming up, and we are kind of at a period where how the gaming industry gonna go, that's where I feel the music business will go as far as content consumption, whether it's you listening to music or watching movies. But it's gonna be not just listening anymore because the gaming industry, as you've been in it for a while, a long time, that it's all about the experience, if I'm not mistaken. It's all
Hmm.
about you being part of it, you being in the game itself. You no longer just control certain components, you controlling yourself being inside the game, and you're literally just driving yourself, and that's being part of the experience. That's why I think a lot of the kids, and not just kids, anybody, whoever loved playing video games, and the music business will be, we're going to go that way. It's all about the experience. That's what I say, is that pretty much basically the gaming industry going to change the way we consume content from just listening through your headphones on your phone and logging into Spotify or any of these DSPs.
Yeah.
And that's how
I,
I feel. That's what my experience, and me talking to other people like yourself and others on my both podcasts, the music one, Soundbreaker, and Entrepreneurs in Tech. and I that's my own conclusion. And few people kind of say yes to it because they were actually in the midst of developing that type of technology.
Mm. I honestly am extremely surprised that there's no Fortnite of the music industry, meaning maybe it exists and I just don't know about it. But what Fortnite did was very successful was, and Roblox and Minecraft,
Yeah,
they built a giant audience for a fun game. So let's start with the IP, the fun game. But then the UGC really blew it up, the user generated content.
yeah.
So what you rarely see, and maybe it exists somewhere, what you rarely see in the industry of music is that kind of experience where normally you're just consuming the performance of the artist that you're excited about. I don't know how to do it right, but I feel like for something to really, really blow up where you're activating the community, there's going to be some kind of UGC component where the community itself is participating in making the content. Obviously, you don't want terrible music, so like you can't fully democratize it like that, but I think someone's going to figure out a way to do it right.
Yes, and I think you're right. I agree with you actually. It just I feel the music business right now is wasting time on just generative AI music and fighting
Mm,
against each other because of that. Why? Because there's a major pushback. You know,
yeah,
it
people
took
don't want to hear it.
time. Well, no, they don't. I mean, look, when first it was the physical, physical product to be sold, CDs and vinyl and cassettes. That's physical. Okay, in order to listen to it, you need a piece of technology. You need the CD player, the vinyl player, the cassette player. These are all technology driven, uh, you know, content. I mean, not content. I'm sorry, technology driven vehicles for the music business. You need these devices. Without these devices, it won't work. So, and they were making ton of money off of it, billions of dollars. Then digital came in, and it's like everybody scratched their head. No digital rights. No, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. We're not doing it. Then a new era started of the Spotify's and YouTube, Pandora, and you name it. There's about
Well, before then, it
250.
was the
Yeah,
MP3s.
yes. And so now they know there's the new technology coming. They know they have to adapt to it. They know they have to change the infrastructure. They know what it's going to be, but they push back as much as they can to leave it as is. But that's not going to happen because the younger generation, who would pretty much really control the consumption of all this music, is bored from this. Just a piece of earphone and just listening and nodding your head. They don't want that. They want to be part of it. They want to be inside of it. You know, and that's why when TikTok started took off, because TikTok pretty much was, have that experience to create your own little content, come up with viral videos, whether old songs or new song, or creating your own music. And obviously, so it played for a long time and it's still going, but they want something different. And I think that's where the whole thing of mixed reality, call it metaverse, call it mixed reality, call it whatever you want to call it, but this whole thing, the gaming, I think that's going to be the main driving vehicle of of the new technology, that of consuming content in the music business and the visual content, whether it's movies, videos, and all of that.
Do you know the first video game that had success with that? Second
Which
Life.
one?
I don't know if you remember
Second
it
Life.
from the early 2000s.
Wow.
Hugely popular game. Hugely popular game.
Mhm.
They created rock stars out of just regular people that normally would not be rock stars.
Yes.
They created their
Yes.
brand and persona and their music, and these avatars showed up and watched their concerts and bought their stuff. There was actual financial transactions involved with it.
I'm telling you. Yes, that's why I said the gaming industry is always way ahead of the music business. But again, the powder be they want it that way because of the revenues. Because once you lose control of that, then there'll be no major labels to them. But I think in the end, it's going to come to the artist himself, and they control all of that, and the consumer, the fans, and all of that. Amazing, interesting conversation. Really interesting, really, Slava. I truly enjoyed it. I enjoy things like this because I am myself in both side of the equation. I am in the music business for, I don't want to say how long, but over 25 years, and in the tech industry for the past five, I would say 7 years. and I both need it, and I see the advancement. Do interview a lot of people, and I'm always intrigued. I said, you know what? I know the change is coming very soon, but people like yourself who've been in the gaming in the tech industry for a minute and a long minute sees the changes and knows about it. And definitely you position yourself in a place where it's, I would say right now it's extremely crucial and important. And yes, success, I would say, is there for you, coming for you for sure. Definitely. Yes. Knock on wood. Great. I have to say, Slava, definitely, I want to thank you for joining us today on Innovate Presents Entrepreneurs in Tech. Be sure to follow us on social media. And until next time, please keep innovating, stay curious, and think out of the box. Take care. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share Innovate Presents Entrepreneurs in Tech podcast. And if you're joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.